So our protagonist Gi-hun right here survived going toe-to-toe against 455 players in the most psychotic children's game imaginable. After all the ups and downs, Gi-hun somehow lucked his way to victory as the last player standing. Sure, he got a fresh new childhood trauma with a bunch of shapes, but he also got millions of dollars as a prize. The frontman literally told him to just think of this as a bad dream and go enjoy his life. And just as you'd think he'd do just that, he went back inside the game just 3 years later. The show paints Gi-hun as the guy who's finally going to take down the shady organization that handed him all that blood money. But let's be real, why did he even bother? Revenge? Guilt? Bravery? Or maybe, just maybe, our MC is actually a giant airhead after all. I watched both seasons of Squid Game in one day to explain how Gi-hun's stupidity is basically speeding up his downfall. Gi-hun didn't wait until season 2 to start being dumb. He was already making terrible choices way back in season 1. At the very episode the show aired, we can see Gi-hun stealing his poor mom's credit card and attempting to guess the PIN code. Yes, the same mom who's been working herself to the bone to help pay off his massive debt. He took money from her account, and what did he use it for? A sweet birthday gift for his daughter? Nope! Our genius here blew it on horse racing. So watching many horses fight each other as a form of entertainment? Oh wait, isn't that like? At the end, he lost a few rounds, and in classic Gi-hun style, he managed to lose the little he had won too. And this mentality eventually snowballed into an even bigger problem. By the end of Red Light, Green Light, the players were given a chance to vote on leaving the deadly games. The vote was tied, but the mastermind felt generous that day, so broke it by letting them all go. Gi-hun went back to find his mom, only to realize her health was getting worse. They didn't have the money for her treatment, so angry with his financial situation, he entered back into the game. You see, his mother had insurance to cover the cost, and I meant had because she had to cancel it to cover his son's debts. And then there's the last episode of season 1, where Gi-hun somehow manages to be too nice and too dumb at the same time. When it came down to a one-on-one fight with Sang-woo in the final game, Gi-hun was literally steps away from winning. When he decided to get all righteous and wanted to quit by majority vote, this is completely stupid since it would have made all those 454 deaths completely pointless. So Sang-woo, realizing he doesn't want to hear any more of this nonsense, ended things himself and handed Gi-hun the win. So he won, right? Financial freedom, here we go. Well, not exactly. Fast forward a year after the games, and what is our protagonist doing? Quite worse than all the other broke players combined. He didn't even touch a single penny of the prize money. Look, I get being traumatized and all, but he could have at least used the money to start fresh. Maybe pay for therapy, visit his daughter, and live an actual life, you know? And just when it seemed like he was finally going to pull it together and board that plane to see his daughter, he didn't! One fucking phone call and he decided to go full revenge mode. Apparently he couldn't stand the idea of rich people betting on human lives. Funny enough, this is coming from the same guy who literally gambled away his mom's money on horse racing. So Gi-hun won millions of dollars by surviving a death game with a 0.219% chance of making it out alive. But instead of enjoying his life as a rich man, he quite literally does the unthinkable. He decided to attack the organization that was running the games and take revenge. Why would you do that? Did he not stop and think about it for a while? These people run these on an underground private island with a literal army of PlayStation guards and a mind-blowing amount of money to give away. Not to mention the VIPs are basically the richest and most influential people in the country. They are basically untouchable. Sure, the trauma and rage he experienced in the games were brutal, but did he just completely forget how miserable his life was before all of this? The games lasted just a week and he became rich, but he forgot that for over a decade, he struggled to get by as a broke chauffeur buried under a tremendous amount of debt. His life has already turned around, all he has to do is claim it. With that kind of money, he could have shown his ex and daughter he was a changed man. He could have been the one to provide for them, no questions asked. He could have started fresh, been happy, and actually boarded that plane to visit his daughter. But no! Gi-hun saw one guy getting slapped in the subway and immediately started his revenge arc out of nowhere. Even the frontman told him to just get on the plane and move on with his life. What surprises me is that in the process of trying to put an end to the Squid Games, he completely ended all contact with his family. Like, why would you do that? His daughter went from thinking she'd see him tomorrow to being straight up abandoned. Is seeing someone getting slapped in the subway so moving enough for you to abandon your loved ones? The problem I see with Gi-hun is that he is prioritizing people he doesn't even know, over those close to him and even himself. And the worst part of all this is that he didn't change at all. He just went from being a broke idiot to a very rich idiot. If you haven't seen Squid Game Season 2 yet, let me break it down for you. It's basically 7 episodes of Gi-hun's plan backfiring on him every single time. Right off the bat, we learn that Gi-hun has been spending his fortune trying to hunt the Squid Game salesman for 3 whole years at this point. And who does he hire for this very important task? The same thugs who beat him to a pulp in Season 1. No wonder you couldn't find him. If you're throwing away that much money on a years-long manhunt, why on earth would you rely on uneducated thugs to do it? He could have hired private investigators, hackers, or even bribe officials for surveillance access. But instead, all he got was texts saying, "Checked here, boss, he's not here." But hey, by some miracle, his goons did find the salesman, though it cost one of them their lives playing double rock, paper, scissors. Even then, Gi-hun's entire search strategy made no sense. Instead of focusing on finding the recruiter, who might not even know where the island is, why didn't he track down former contestants, the potential VIPs, or maybe rent a few boats and scout for secret islands? Instead, Gi-hun stuck with his 3-year thug selfie operation. What's funny is that the Squid Game salesman even found him first. Gi-hun even set up shop in a rundown love hotel as his secret base, thinking its hundreds of rooms would throw people off. Except the salesman casually strolled right into his own bedroom. And of course you remember the detective from Season 1. Apparently he and Gi-hun shook hands and decided to team up and take down the Squid Games. The only problem is, this is where things went from bad to worse. When they finally teamed up, Gi-hun immediately trusted the detective, flashing his piles of money like it wouldn't tempt anyone to betray him. At least Gi-hun did prepare for the island. Sort of. He stockpiled guns, ammo, and even hired some intimidating mercenaries. Sounds promising, right? Except these guys turned out to be about as competent as the thugs. They fell into every trap imaginable. In one scene, they're tailing Gi-hun's limousine and planning to ambush the front man, only to get taken out because they didn't think to bulletproof their tires. And the moment Gi-hun received an invitation to talk with the front man, what was his plan then? Apologize and shut down their game? But he apparently had a brilliant idea. He would put a tracker on his tooth and ask to re-enter the game again. That way his mercenaries will be able to find the location of the island and they can raid it. Sounds good, right? Nope! And for 2 reasons apparently. You'd think an organization that has also planted trackers on thousands of players before would have thought to use body scanners before letting anyone on the island. They literally change you into a jumpsuit when you enter the games. The detective and the mercenaries spent the entire season lost at sea because they decided to trust a sketchy fisherman who, surprise, turned out to be working for the Squid Game organization. And speaking of children's games, can we talk about how dumb it was that Gi-hun couldn't convince everyone to vote and leave the island? He claimed to have survived the games before, so they should leave, but it backfired and now everyone trusted him like he was some kind of expert so they could win. Now, I don't believe Gi-hun could have seen this key detail at first, but as a former player, he should have seen that the games they would play are already in plain sight. If he'd paid attention to the walls nearing the end of the first Squid Game, he should have noticed that the walls were covered in murals foreshadowing the games they were about to play. It was clearly seen from all angles since all of the beds were already removed. So how could you miss this clear detail when you've been in that room for hours on end? Had he knew this, it would have given him a strategic advantage during the next game. But what I find strange is that why didn't a single player come across the murals and thought, "Isn't this the game I played earlier?" But while Gi-hun is not smart, he is certainly very lucky. A Aside from his absolutely bonkers plans to take down the Squid Games, Gi-hun is also infamous for his insane luck. Because let's be real here, he's the protagonist and you can't kill off the main character too early. If it were real life and he didn't have some plot armor, oh boy, he'd definitely be dead. Let's rewind to the very first game, red light, green light. At this moment, Gi-hun almost bit the dust before even crossing the finish line. He tripped, and the only reason he survived was because Almighty Ali grabbed him mid-fall and literally deadlifted his 200-pound self one-handed, while the creepy doll scanned for movement. If Ali hadn't been working on his biceps, they'd both be dead. Then there's the marbles game with the old man, who we now know was the mastermind. Apparently, he was an expert at marbles, and our protagonist was about to lose hard until the old man sacrificed his balls for Gi-hun. Okay, weird phrasing, but you get it. And the glass bridge is where his luck went in full force. When they randomly choose a number on who will go first, Gi-hun got to go last, meaning he didn't have to guess the safe tiles or risk plunging to his death like most of the other players. And his luck stick with him even after the game's end. In Season 2, the Squid Game salesman confronted him at his secret love hotel base, and Gi-hun agreed to play Russian roulette. I mean, if you are planning to take down a massive organization, sure, a game with a 50% chance of death is the best action to take, right? Fast forward to when Gi-hun re-entered the Squid Game, and guess what? He almost slipped again during red light, green light, and got luckily saved by another random player just in time as the doll moved by. Seriously, how many times does this guy need to roll the dice before he realizes he's gambling with his life? While his luck keeps balancing out his stupidity, the biggest mistake he ever made was trusting the same player number that betrayed him before. Behind that very serious action star look is someone who will trust literally anyone at the drop of a hat. After spending years obsessively researching the Squid Game, you'd think Gi-hun might have developed a sharper sense of caution. But nope! When a clean-cut, polished guy, who clearly doesn't look like he's drowning in debt, shows up as player 001, Gi-hun falls for it yet again. Now if the last 001 turned out to be the mastermind behind the games, wouldn't that number immediately raise some red flags? But it gets worse. Player 001 didn't even join the games until after the second round. If Gi-hun had been paying attention, he might have noticed the absence of a player 001 during the first games and been way more suspicious when one suddenly popped up out of nowhere. Let's not forget the frontman had already spoken to Gi-hun back then at the limousine after the first Squid Game. And at that time, he had no mask on, so there was no voice distortion. Yet how did Gi-hun not recognize his voice? The frontman wasn't exactly flawless in his undercover act. He even slipped up and called Gi-hun by name before they'd officially met. At first, he wanted to save everyone by voting to leave the games. Sounds like a solid plan, right? Leave, regroup, and rethink his strategy. But fast forward to after Game 3, when Team X had a one-player advantage over Team O, everyone knew that the lesser team would attack. So if you were Gi-hun at that exact moment, you'd only pick one of two options: attack, so that the next majority vote would be in your favor, or to defend so as not to kill the players of the opposing team. And just as you'd think Gi-hun would pick this option, he decided to let Team O slaughter Team X while they pretended to play dead. Why, you ask? So they could steal the guards' weapons afterwards. Yes, you heard that right. Gi-hun thought sacrificing his own team members, who wanted to leave, was the key to saving everyone later on. Makes total sense, right? It doesn't, because they could have just defended themselves, faked their deaths without losing anyone, and still grabbed the guards' weapons. Instead, Gi-hun's plan handed Team O a landslide victory, leaving them in control of everything had things gone south. Which, spoiler alert, it did! While they successfully got the guards' weapons, it was very clear they had no way of winning for the most part. Let's break this down. Gi-hun and his team had zero intel on the guards' numbers, the layout of the facility, the weapons they'd face, or any of the tech involved. And for what you ask? These people didn't come to the Squid Games to be heroes or make the world a better place. They came for the money. They hit that leave button because they wanted out, not because they wanted to fight for some noble cause. If they'd stayed alive, a great number of them could have peacefully left with their fair share of the winnings. But thanks to Gi-hun, many of them got nothing but a one-way ticket to the afterlife. What's even crazier is that people actually went along with this rebellion. Did they suddenly forget about their terrible indebted lives outside the island? There was no endgame to this action. Even if they succeeded, they wouldn't get any prize money anymore. This season made one thing painfully clear. Gi-hun thought he was outsmarting everyone, but in reality, he was 20 steps behind. And giving player 001 the last magazine was the final nail in the coffin. As the Squid Game salesman once said, Gi-hun's victories come down to pure dumb luck. But judging by how this rebellion played out, that luck seems to be running out. From the ending, it's clear Gi-hun was kept alive so he can continue playing the games in Season 3, most likely alongside a majority of Team O players. And as for the mercenaries, it looked like they'll be enjoying their extended South Korean expedition, aimlessly searching for the mysterious island while accomplishing absolutely nothing. That's it for today. See you on our next video.